Hi, this is Dr. Bob Dannenhoffer, the Public Health Officer for Douglas County, with another of our COVID conversations today for September 29th, 2022. We've been doing these now for quite a many weeks, and I think now we're beginning to see nearly the end of this COVID pandemic. If you have questions, please send them to us at Facebook questions at douglaspublichealthnetwork.org, and we'll get to those next time we have a question today to answer. So the news on COVID is nearly uniformly good. In the world, the number of cases decreasing, the number of hospitalizations are decreasing, and the number of deaths are decreasing throughout the world, except for a little outbreak in Russia. And there's a lot going on in Russia. The COVID world has been pretty quiet. We worried about the southern hemisphere because they're just now leaving the height of their winter, and they've had a pretty quiet time of it this year with COVID. So it suggests that we may not be expecting a terrible third winter from COVID. In the US, the cases are relatively low. There's a little hot spot in Kentucky and West Virginia, but other than that, a relatively low number of cases in the US. In Oregon, we've had a low number of cases, some little variation in the number of cases day to day, but overall, the number of cases is relatively low. The positivity is low, the hospitalization rate is low, and the deaths are low, and that's all good news. And Douglas County is similar. We had a little uptick about 10 days ago. We're down again. We have just a few people in the hospital. And again, many of those people in the hospital now are there. They have COVID, but they're actually being hospitalized for something else. So overall, things are going pretty well. The question is the pandemic over? Well, it's either over or nearly over, but much depends upon the emergence of any new variants. So as you know, there was the new Omicron variants that were identified in November of last year. And we started with, there were 5 different variants of the Omicron, and we went through the original Omicron, then BA2, and now BA4 and 5. But it doesn't look like there are any other new significant variants. And so while the virus continues to change, none has been able to outcompete the BA5. And so BA5 remains the dominant form of the virus throughout the world, in the US, in Oregon, and in Douglas County. The good news with this is that with no new variants, we wouldn't expect big outbreaks of disease. The bad news is what we're seeing is that having had the disease only gives you protection for a couple of months. And we're seeing now people on their 4th and 5th cases of COVID. So during each of the waves, they got COVID, thought, well, I should be protected, but then they got it the next wave and the next wave again. The good news is that they're not serious enough ill to be in the hospital. But the bad news is they're still pretty sick, missing work and spreading it to others, and just not feeling very well for a week or so. So it's out there, and we think this is going to happen. The good news is that we do have this bivalent booster. This bivalent booster is really quite effective against both the ancestral strains, which we don't see very much of anymore, and then against the new Omicron strains, which are widely circulating. So the hope is that if we can get enough people boosted, that we can avoid another spike of the disease in this winter. The other concern we have is about influenza. So influenza, we know, goes about every year. It spreads by respiratory droplets. So over the last few years, when we've used masks and distancing and staying home, we've had very little spread of flu. So over the last 3 years, people have not had much experience with flu. And during the time of COVID, the number of flu vaccines dropped. So we have people with a little less immunity to flu than they've had in the past. And we think this year is going to be a typical, or even maybe worse than typical, flu year. Because when we look in Australia and South America, they seem to have slightly more than typical flu years. And it was a little earlier and a little more hospitalization. So we're a little worried about that. So what's our advice? Our advice is just the same as it's been before. Get vaccinated if you've not been vaccinated. Now, most of us have been vaccinated, but for those people who are vaccinated, please go ahead and get a booster. The bivalent vaccine boosters are now becoming more and more widely available. We have a clinic every day through the end of September in Diamond Lake. This clinic runs from 1 until 6. At the end of this week, they're going to be up in Eugene, but they'll still be back in Roseburg on Thursdays and Fridays throughout October from 1 until 6. They have all of the COVID vaccines, and so you can go ahead and get your vaccine at this clinic. It's free. no pre-registration required, a drive-through, and there's a little video here that'll show you just how incredibly easy it is to go ahead and get your vaccine. All right, this is Bob Dannenhoffer again. Here I'm getting my COVID shot today. I'm at the clinic here on Diamond Lake. It's been incredibly fast, and the people have been so very nice. We got here right at 1 o'clock, and by 1:15, they're ready to get this shot. So we'll see how it goes. Again, it's very well set up. It's in the new emergency preparedness space that the county has. We're at the old Colorcraft building on Diamond Lake, which is cat a corner from Avery's Pizza, right next door to Kowloon's restaurant. And they're set up. They're going to be here every day through the end of September from 1 until 6. And then on Thursdays and Fridays from 1 until 6 through the end of October. So I'm here today with Christina, and Christina's going to be my vaccinator for today. She's been lovely, and this has been a very quick process. So just watch and see.
For your identification, I'm going to confirm your last name. You want to tell me your last name?
Dannenhoffer, Dannenhoffer.
And your first name?
Robert.
What's your birthday?
2756.
And you're getting Moderna bivalent today, is that correct?
I am getting Moderna bivalent. Yes.
This is your card.
Thank you.
I'm going to wipe your hands. So I'm giving you the Moderna bivalent today.
Great.
And it's 4.5 ml.
Yes, and you have a great low dose syringe, so wasting very little.
4.5 ml.
All right.
That's it.
She did a beautiful job. Very easy, very quick, and very safe. So please come and get your vaccine. So the vaccines are available, and they seem to be safe and effective. A recent study came out this week that looked at the antibody production against Omicron with the new vaccine. It seems to be very good. So we think if you get this booster, you'll likely have at least 3 or 4 months protection against getting Omicron at all, and probably long-term protection against getting seriously ill. Now, the question we had this week is whether, how extensively tested have these vaccines been? Well, they're made by Moderna and Pfizer, and as you know, they did a very extensive testing in 2020 when the vaccines were first approved. They've had post-marketing or post-delivery testing since 2020, and again, these vaccines to be safe and effective, except for those few side effects that we know about. So with Moderna and Pfizer, there's a slight increase in myocarditis among young men, less than getting the disease, but clearly more than getting the placebo. So there's a slight risk in that, but again, that appears to be rare and limited to that group. Now, when they added the second strain, when they added the Omicron strain, there was not widespread testing. But that's typical. Every year when we change the flu vaccine, we don't do widespread testing when we add the new antigens. And similarly with other vaccines, when we add antigens, if the vaccine is otherwise the same, we don't test it. So I think this vaccine has been tested just like all the other vaccines. And again, we don't do widespread testing when we simply add an antigen. I think it's safe. And as you can see from the video, I got mine and things are still fine. So again, we're in a good point in the pandemic. The number of cases is low and we think they should be low. But again, our best advice is get a booster, get the bivalent booster, it's widely available, and also get a flu booster, because I think this year could be a little bit more serious flu year than we've seen in the past. Other than that, things are going well. Enjoy family and friends. But still, if you're sick, stay home. We still are seeing outbreaks where people who are sick go to work and they spread it to others, and then everybody else at work either gets it or some of the people are lucky enough not to get it. But there are very few people now who've never had it. Now, I'm in that group, I think. I don't think I've ever had the disease. I've tested many times and I've always been negative. But BA.5 is so contagious that even people who've had the disease before or been boosted still can go ahead and get the disease. So be out there, be safe, go ahead and get your booster for both COVID and for influenza. Again, this is Dr. Dannenhoffer, the Public Health Officer for Douglas County. Thank you.